The Earth is full of amazing creatures, many of which have been translated into Lego, so today we'll be building a bunch of habitats to display these animals in their natural environment, starting with the African savannah. I began by laying down a foundation of light and dark tan plates, and filled it with tall dry grass in olive. I then added a pair of ostriches running through the open field as one of them is suddenly pounced by a hungry lion. Over in the back corner, I added a lone tree using these large curved pieces, topping it off with a big canopy of olive green leaf pieces and a scorpion enjoying the shade. Overall, this display turned out pretty good, and the shot of the lion mid-jump is really dynamic. Moving on north, we'll be making the taiga biome. For this one, I used browns and dark green for the forest floor, as well as some trans blue for part of a lake. On the right, we'll put a spruce tree, made using these dark green fern pieces stacked on top of each other upside down, and below it we'll put this red squirrel. On the other side, we'll be building a pine tree. I started by making this round pillar and clipped on some dark green leaf pieces. On top of this, I put some plates sticking out for a pair of owls to perch on, clipped on even more foliage and added a canopy. I then added it to the display and attached another owl flying from the tree. For the centerpiece, I added this brown bear walking down this trodden path. Finally, we have to add the classic Lego frog, which I placed on the shore beneath a pair of mushrooms. This one turned out terrific and really captures the cold feeling of the taiga. I also left some space by the river in case Lego ever makes a raccoon using the red panda mold, but if not, I can always add an otter or a beaver. Moving on to South America, we'll be making a tropical rainforest, starting with an all-brown foundation. This may seem a bit weird for a lush jungle, but rainforest floors are surprisingly bare since all the trees are sucking up the nutrients and blocking out a lot of the sun. For our first tree, I added ferns and roots to the base, and going upwards, I added a bunch of connection points for branches, vines, and foliage. On the top of the tree, I added this 2x2 jumper and attached this massive canopy with perching spots for a bunch of tropical birds. Along the branches of the tree, I then added some monkeys climbing up and down. With the tree done, I added a shrub in front of it with a butterfly perched on it. On the other side, I built up another shrub using a ton of fern pieces, and on top of it, a frog taking cover beneath this tiny canopy with a butterfly on it. Behind this, I made another small tree with a simple canopy and perched a pair of toucans on it. With that, we have our main build done, and now we can just go crazy with the plants. On the left, I added this small bush and a pair of these magenta flowers, and on the other side, I added these 2 red flowers based on this promotional set. Finally, I covered the ground with leaves and tall grass, added a bunch more frogs, and with that, our rainforest is done. Out of all the habitats, this is the one I had planned out the least, but I think it ended up working in our favor. Now, the idea was to have a jaguar walking through the jungle, just like the bear in the taiga, but the last time Lego released one was in 2017, and getting my hands on one would cost me $20. I guess there is this jaguar from an Encanto set, but the friend style just clashes way too much, so we'll just add Carl and Russell for the time being. For our next habitat, we'll be going back north to the Arctic tundra, beginning with a foundation covered in snow. To break this up a bit more, I added this frozen lake and a couple of exposed rocks. I then added some twigs and shrubs poking out of the snow. On either side, we can then build some spruce trees using the same technique as before, except we'll be using white fern pieces on the top to cover them with snow. Over by these rocks, we'll add a gray squirrel, and walking between the trees, we can add the Lego reindeer. The reindeer is pretty saturated compared to the rest of the scene, but it's the only color we got. Now, this display is perfect for the Arctic fox from the recent city sets, but because it's so new, it's still pretty expensive, so we'll just add this rabbit for the time being and call it there. Overall, this does have a lot of similarities to our previous forest, however they are still quite distinct from one another thanks to the color palette. So far, we've made habitats from across the earth, but for our final one, we'll be diving under the sea with a coral reef. I began with a dark tan seafloor built up with rock formations in the back using dark and light gray. Over in this crevice, I attached this angled bar piece which lets us add this starfish climbing up the rockwork, and I used the same technique to attach this crab. With that, it's time to go crazy with the foliage. Obviously, we'll be using the coral pieces, but also a ton of weird pieces like claw pieces, bananas, and hair pieces. We'll also use these wavy sword pieces as seagrass, which I found in a Lego Friends set. With that in place, we'll cover the seafloor with clams, crabs, starfish, and lobsters. I then attached a bunch of clip pieces onto the corals to add fish swimming around in different colors. On top of this coral, we'll add some angled bars to attach this jellyfish made from a trans pink chef's hat. Over on this rockwork, I left a hole which will let us slide in a giant rod piece and add a shark swimming over the reef. Finally, I used a trans clear antenna to add a stingray swimming into the scene, and with that, we are completely done with all the habitats. I hope you enjoyed these displays as much as I did, and if you want to make some for yourselves, I made instructions for the diorama base that you can download for free in the description, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what you create. Also, please let me know which of the habitats was your favorite, but until next time, take care.